The deep, resonant sound of the alarm echoed through the vast halls of Zenith Station, a structure so immense it seemed to stretch endlessly into the void of space. The station, a marvel of alien engineering, glowed faintly with the soft hum of energy coursing through its walls. Its corridors were lined with intricate carvings, symbols of unity from the 13 species that called this station the heart of galactic diplomacy. Yet now, the harmony of this place was shattered by the urgency of the alarm sound that signaled not just danger, but upheaval. Ambassador Thalax's emerald green scales glistened under the bright, artificial lights as he moved with frantic speed. His forearms clutched a hollow pad that emitted a faint, bluish glow, its surface alive with shifting data. His breath came in short, sharp bursts, his reptilian lungs struggling to keep pace with his racing thoughts. The weight of the information he carried was almost unbearable. It was not just a report or a warning, it was a revelation. As he approached the Grand Council chamber, the massive doors slid open with a low hiss, revealing a circular room filled with some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The air inside was tense, heavy with the unspoken weight of countless political rivalries and alliances. Around the table sat representatives of 13 species, each distinct in their appearance. The Varnoke Dominion's envoy, a towering figure with obsidian skin that shimmered like liquid metal, sat rigidly, his 6 eyes narrowing as Thalax entered. Beside him, the Hegari Alliance's delegate, a pale, willowy creature with translucent wings, leaned forward, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. Across the table, the Piran Collective's representative, a stout, armored being with a face like carved stone, drummed his clawed fingers impatiently. Thalax stopped at the center of the room, his chest heaving. His voice, usually calm and measured, trembled with urgency. "Esteemed council members," he began, his words cutting through the murmurs of the room. "What I am about to reveal will alter the balance of the galaxy." His clawed fingers danced across the surface of the hollow pad, and with a soft chime, he activated its display. Above the table, a hologram flickered to life. Gasps filled the room as the image sharpened into focus. The ship was enormous, its sheer size dwarfing even the largest vessels in any known fleet. Its hull was a deep black, broken only by intricate, glowing markings that pulsed faintly, as if the ship itself were alive. The markings were unlike anything the Council had seen, ancient, almost sacred in their complexity, yet eerily familiar. The room fell silent, the weight of the image pressing down on everyone present. But it wasn't just the ship's size or its mysterious design that left them stunned. It was the flag it bore. A simple, unassuming emblem, yet one that carried a profound significance: the flag of Terra. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was thick, charged with disbelief and unease. Finally, the Varnoke envoy broke the silence, his deep, resonant voice tinged with incredulity. This cannot be real. The Terrans are a young species. They have barely ventured beyond their own star system. How could they possess something like this?" Thalax's gaze swept across the room, his green eyes glowing faintly. "I understand your disbelief," he said, his voice steadier now. "But the data is undeniable. This ship is real. And it belongs to the Terrans." The Hegari delegate leaned closer to the hologram, her translucent wings fluttering nervously. What do we know about this ship? Its origin? Its purpose?" Thalax hesitated for a moment, his claws tightening around the hollow pad. "We know very little," he admitted. "But our initial scans indicate that this vessel is ancient, far older than any known Terran technology. Its power readings suggest capabilities beyond anything in our collective understanding. And yet, the markings on its hull, the design of its systems, they are unmistakably Terran. The Piran representative slammed his armored fist onto the table, the sound echoing through the chamber. Impossible. The Terrans are primitive compared to us. They have no such ships, no such technology. This must be a trick, a deception. Thalax turned to face him, his voice firm. If it is a trick, it is one of unimaginable scale. Our sensors do not lie. This ship exists, and it carries the flag of Terra. We cannot ignore this. The room erupted into chaos, voices overlapping in a cacophony of fear, anger, and confusion. Some demanded immediate action, calling for fleets to be mobilized. Others urged caution, warning against rash decisions. Amid the uproar, Thalax stood silently, his gaze fixed on the hologram. The ship loomed above the table, a silent, enigmatic presence. In that moment, Thalax felt the enormity of what he had uncovered. This was not just a ship. It was a message, a challenge, a mystery that could reshape the destiny of the galaxy. And at its heart was Terra, a world that, until now, had been dismissed as insignificant. As the council continued to argue, Thalax allowed himself a fleeting moment of reflection. What secrets did this ship hold? What truths about the Terrans had been hidden for so long? And, most importantly, what would happen when those truths finally came to light? Far from the bustling corridors of Zenith Station, silence enveloped the vast expanse of uncharted space. The darkness stretched endlessly, broken only by the faint glimmer of distant stars. On the bridge of the TSS Pathfinder, Captain Elias Drake stood tall, his sharp eyes scanning the void through the reinforced glass of the observation deck. The hum of the ship's engines vibrated faintly beneath his boots, a steady reminder of the journey they were undertaking. His hands rested behind his back, his posture rigid yet calm, as though the weight of the unknown beyond the horizon was merely another challenge to overcome. The Pathfinder was not alone. Flanking it were two other Terran ships, their sleek, silver hulls reflecting the dim light of the stars. Together, the small fleet moved like a cautious predator, venturing into the uncharted fringes of the galaxy. This was a mission of discovery, a chance for humanity to expand its understanding of the cosmos. Yet, beneath the surface, there was an unspoken tension. The further they ventured, the more the crew felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. Captain Drake's thoughts were interrupted by the sharp voice of Chief Engineer Myra Voss. She stepped onto the bridge, her auburn hair tied back in a loose braid, her expression a mixture of curiosity and urgency. "Captain," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the control panels. "Sensors are picking up something enormous 2 hours away." Drake turned to face her, his brow furrowing. "Enormous," he repeated, his voice calm but laced with intrigue. "Define enormous, Chief." Myra handed him a data pad, her fingers lingering on the edges as though hesitant to let it go. "Bigger than anything we've ever seen," she said quietly. "It's stationary, but the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever it is, it's not natural." The bridge grew silent as the crew exchanged uneasy glances. The calm professionalism that usually defined their demeanor was replaced by a quiet unease. Drake's gaze lingered on the data pad for a moment before handing it back to Myra. "Set a course," he ordered. "Let's see what's out there." As the fleet adjusted its trajectory, the atmosphere on the bridge grew heavier. The usual chatter of the crew was replaced by an almost reverent silence. Every passing moment seemed to stretch into eternity, the anticipation thick enough to taste. When the object finally came into view, the entire bridge seemed to hold its breath. Before them loomed a vessel of unimaginable size, its silhouette cutting through the darkness like a shadow against the stars. It was 10 times larger than the Pathfinder, its presence almost oppressive in its enormity. The hull was black as the void, absorbing the faint starlight around it, yet etched with intricate silver lines that glowed faintly, pulsating like the heartbeat of some ancient, slumbering giant. The patterns were mesmerizing, their complexity almost hypnotic, as though they carried a meaning just beyond comprehension. The crew stared in stunned silence, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of the alien vessel. Dr. Adrian Kellen, the ship's xenologist, stepped closer to the observation window, his breath fogging the glass. He whispered, almost to himself, This cannot be alien. It feels familiar." His words sent a ripple of unease through the bridge. Familiar. How could something so vast, so ancient, feel familiar? Drake's jaw tightened as he studied the vessel. There was something unsettling about it, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. It wasn't fear. Drake was not a man easily shaken, but a deep, instinctual sense that they were standing on the edge of something far greater than themselves. "Bring us closer," he ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. As the fleet approached, the details of the ship became clearer. The silver lines etched into its hull formed intricate patterns that seemed almost alive, shifting faintly as though responding to their presence. Myra, standing beside Drake, frowned as she studied the markings. "Captain," she said hesitantly, "these symbols, they look like..." "Terran," Drake finished for her, his voice low. The realization sent a chill through the room. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and dread. How could a ship this ancient, this advanced, bear symbols that resembled Terran writing? The implications were staggering. Drake's mind raced as he weighed his options. The ship was a mystery, one that demanded answers. But it was also a potential threat. If it was truly of Terran origin, what did that mean for humanity's history? What secrets had been hidden in the depths of space, waiting to be uncovered? "Prepare a boarding party," he said finally, his voice firm. Myra turned to him, her eyes wide. "Captain, are you sure that's wise? We don't know what's on that ship. It could be dangerous." Drake met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "We didn't come all this way to turn back now," he said. "Whatever's on that ship, we need to know. If it's a part of our past, we have a responsibility to uncover the truth." The decision was made. As the boarding party prepared to depart, the crew watched in silence, their hearts heavy with anticipation. The ancient ship loomed before them, a silent enigma, its glowing lines casting faint, ghostly light across the darkness. As the boarding vessel detached from the Pathfinder and began its slow approach, a sense of foreboding settled over the crew. The ship was not just a discovery, it was a question, a challenge, a doorway to the unknown. And as they drew closer, the faint glow of the symbols seemed to grow brighter, as though the ship itself was watching, waiting for them to arrive. The air inside the ancient craft was heavy, almost oppressive, as though the weight of its history pressed down on the boarding team with every step they took. The walls of the vessel pulsed faintly with silver light, casting eerie shadows that danced across the floor. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of energy that seemed to emanate from the very bones of the ship. Captain Elias Drake led the team cautiously, his flashlight cutting through the dim glow. Behind him, Myra Voss and Dr. Adrian Kellen followed, their faces pale but determined. Each breath they took felt like an intrusion into something sacred, something that had been waiting in silence for countless millennia. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, its size overwhelming. The ceiling arched high above them, disappearing into shadows, while the walls were covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid silver. At the center of the room stood a circular console, its surface smooth and dark, save for faintly glowing lines that spiraled outward like veins. The air was cool, but there was a strange warmth emanating from the console, almost as if it were alive. Drake approached cautiously, his gloved hand hovering over the surface. "This must be the control room," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Myra stepped closer, her eyes scanning the patterns on the console. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "But these symbols, they look like they were made for human hands." Before anyone could respond, the console flickered to life. Light burst from its surface, forming holographic displays that filled the room with a soft, ethereal glow. Star maps, streams of data, and unfamiliar symbols danced in the air around them. The team froze, their breaths caught in their throats. Then, a voice echoed through the chamber, calm, authoritative, and undeniably human. "Welcome home, children of Terra." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The team exchanged stunned glances, their disbelief mirrored in one another's eyes. The voice continued, its tone warm yet commanding, as though it carried the weight of eons. "I am Orasis," it said. "The caretaker of this vessel. I have been waiting for your return to the stars." Dr. Kellen stepped forward, his hands trembling. "Orasis," he said, his voice shaking. What do you mean? Return. We've never been here before." The holographic displays shifted, the star maps zooming out to reveal a vast network of interconnected galaxies. The patterns of light formed trails, pathways that connected countless worlds. "You may not remember," Orasis replied, its tone patient yet unwavering. "But you have been here before. Long ago, humanity was not as you know it now. You were not the fledgling species you believe yourselves to be. You were rulers of the stars." The words sent a chill through the team, their implications almost too vast to comprehend. Orasis continued, its voice steady and calm, as though recounting a story it had told many times before. "Millions of years ago, the Terrans built an intergalactic empire unlike any other. You guided the development of countless worlds, nurturing young civilizations, shaping the destiny of galaxies. You were creators, explorers, and guardians of the cosmos." Myra's knees felt weak, and she steadied herself against the console. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Humanity's history doesn't go back that far. We've only just begun exploring beyond our own system." Orasis's voice softened, almost as if it understood their disbelief. "It is not impossible," it said. "It is forgotten. Your ancestors, the first Terrans, saw the dangers of their own power. They feared stagnation, feared that their empire would crumble under its own weight. And so, they made a choice. They erased their memories, dismantled their empire, and scattered themselves across the stars. They chose to start anew, to rediscover themselves as a species. But they left behind guardians vessels like this one, an ace like myself to awaken when humanity was ready to reclaim its legacy." The room fell silent, the weight of Orasis's words sinking in. Drake's mind raced, struggling to process the enormity of what they had just learned. If what Orasis said was true, then everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe was a lie. They were not newcomers to the stars, they were returning home. Dr. Kellen broke the silence, his voice barely audible. "Why now?" he asked. "Why reveal this to us now?" The holographic displays shifted again, zooming in on a single point of light, a distant star system? Because the time has come, Orasis replied. Humanity has reached a threshold. You have rediscovered the curiosity, the resilience, and the unity that once defined you. But there is more. Forces are stirring in the galaxy, forces that threaten to consume all that you have built. You will need the knowledge of your past to face the challenges of your future. Myra's voice was trembling, but her curiosity pushed her forward. What challenges? She asked. What are we facing? Orasis hesitated for the first time, its light dimming slightly. There are those who remember you, it said. Old enemies. Old allies. Some will welcome your return. Others will seek to destroy you before you can rise again. The choice is yours, children of Terra. Will you reclaim your legacy, or will you allow it to fade into the void? Drake stepped forward, his expression hardening. The weight of the moment bore down on him, but he stood tall, his resolve unshaken. We didn't come all this way to turn back now, he said firmly. If this is who we are, who we were, then we need to know. We need to be ready. Orasis's light brightened, as though in approval. Very well, it said. Then let us begin. The path ahead will not be easy, but you are Terrans. You were born to overcome the impossible. As the holograms shifted again, revealing more of the ship's secrets, the team felt a strange mixture of awe and determination. They had come seeking answers, and they had found something far greater than they could have imagined. The forgotten past of humanity was not just a story, it was a call to action, a reminder of who they truly were. And as they stood in the heart of the ancient vessel, they knew that their journey was only just beginning. The grand chamber of Zenith Station was a storm of chaos. The Council, a gathering of leaders from the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, sat around a vast circular table carved from crystalline stone. The room, usually a place of measured diplomacy and careful negotiation, now buzzed with fear and anger. Holographic projections of ancient Terran ships hovered above the table, their sleek, otherworldly designs casting long shadows across the walls. Each ship was a silent titan, a remnant of a forgotten age, and their sudden awakening had thrown the galaxy into turmoil. High Chancellor Vorthes of the Hegari Alliance, a tall, gaunt figure with piercing yellow eyes, rose to his feet. His voice, cold and sharp, cut through the din of overlapping arguments. This is a threat unlike any we have faced before, he declared, his words echoing in the chamber. These Terran ships are appearing across the galaxy, their technology far surpassing anything we possess. If the Terrans regain control of these vessels, they will become unstoppable. We cannot allow this to happen. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, but not all shared his sentiment. At the far end of the table, General Korat of the Piran Collective leaned forward, his massive frame bristling with tension. His crimson skin glowed faintly under the chamber's light, and his sharp, predatory features were twisted into a snarl. Enough talk, he growled, slamming his fist on the table with a force that made the holograms flicker. We must act now. Every moment we hesitate gives them more time to consolidate their power. We should strike before it's too late, destroy these ships and crush their ambitions before they rise. His words were met with a mix of nods and uneasy silence. The Pirans were known for their aggression, their warlike nature, and Korat's suggestion was unsurprising. Yet, even among allies, the thought of openly attacking the Terrans, a species that had only recently begun to re-establish itself, was a dangerous one. The room seemed to hold its breath as the weight of his proposal settled over the council. But then, a softer voice broke through the tension, calm yet resolute. General Korat, said Councillor Lyra of the Varnoke Dominion, her pale, silver-tinted skin shimmering faintly under the chamber's glow. Her violet eyes, filled with both intelligence and compassion, met his fiery gaze without flinching. "You speak of destruction, but have you considered what that might unleash? These ships have not attacked anyone. They've made no hostile moves. Instead, they appear to be reaching out to the Terrans, teaching them about their past. Does that not suggest a purpose beyond conquest?" Korod sneered, his claws curling into fists. "Purpose? What purpose could they have other than domination? You speak of caution, but caution will only lead to our downfall. Do you truly believe the Terrans, once they regain their full strength, will show us mercy? They were rulers of the stars once before. They will not settle for less a second time." Lyra stood, her voice steady but filled with quiet passion. "And what if you're wrong, General? What if this is not a resurgence of tyranny, but an opportunity for unity? The galaxy is fractured, divided by fear and mistrust. Perhaps the Terrans' return is a chance to bridge those divides, to learn from their history and ours. If we attack them without provocation, we risk becoming the very threat we fear they might be." The chamber erupted into heated debate, voices clashing like waves in a storm. Some sided with Korod, their fear of Terran power driving them toward aggression. Others, inspired by Lyra's words, argued for diplomacy, for understanding. Vorthes watched the chaos unfold, his expression unreadable, though his sharp eyes flicked between the arguing factions like a predator sizing up its prey. As the council argued, the holographic projections above them shifted, displaying new reports. More Terran ships were awakening, their ancient forms emerging from the void like ghosts of a forgotten era. Each ship bore the same intricate designs, the same glowing silver lines that pulsed faintly as if alive. They appeared in systems scattered across the galaxy, their presence an enigma, their purpose unknown. Some hovered silently in the darkness, while others transmitted messages in a language long lost to time. The sight only deepened the fear in the room. "Look at them!" Korod roared, pointing to the holograms. "They're everywhere. If we wait any longer, there will be no stopping them." Lyra shook her head, her voice rising above the noise. "And what if their awakening is a response to something greater? What if they are not preparing for war, but for a threat we cannot yet see? Destroying them now could doom us all." Her words hung in the air, a chilling possibility that silenced even the most vocal of the council members. For a moment, the room was still, the weight of the decision pressing down on them all. The galaxy was at a crossroads, its future teetering on the edge of uncertainty. The Terran's return was a spark, one that could ignite the fires of war or light the way to a new era of cooperation. High Chancellor Vorthes finally spoke, his voice measured but firm. "We cannot ignore the threat these ships represent," he said. "But nor can we act without understanding their purpose. I propose we send envoys to the Terrans, to learn their intentions. If they seek peace, we will consider collaboration. But if they show even the slightest hint of aggression..." His eyes narrowed, his tone hardening. "We will act decisively." The council murmured in agreement, though the tension in the room remained palpable. Korod's expression was dark, his jaw clenched in frustration, but he said nothing. Lyra, though wary, allowed herself a small sigh of relief. It was not the resolution she had hoped for, but it was better than outright war. As the meeting adjourned, the leaders dispersed, their minds heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. The galaxy was on the brink of a new chapter, its fate tied to the mystery of the Terrans and their ancient ships. Fear and hope warred in equal measure, and the path forward was shrouded in uncertainty. In the silence that followed, the holograms above the empty chamber continued to flicker, the ancient Terran ships glowing faintly like distant stars. Somewhere, deep within the void, the past and the future were colliding, and the galaxy could only hold its breath as it awaited the outcome. The corridors of the ancient ship seemed alive as Orasis led Captain Drake and his team deeper into its heart. The walls shimmered faintly, their silver surfaces etched with flowing patterns that pulsed softly, like veins carrying energy through a living organism. The air was thick with an unspoken weight, the kind that spoke of untold stories and forgotten legacies. Every step the team took felt like walking through the pages of a history book written in the stars. Orasis's voice echoed gently around them, calm yet filled with purpose. Your ancestors built these vessels not as weapons of destruction, but as tools of creation, the AI explained, its tone carrying a trace of something almost human: pride, perhaps, or sorrow. They sought to guide the galaxy, to nurture its many civilizations. But power, even when wielded with noble intentions, is a dangerous thing. They learned this the hard way. Drake's jaw tightened as he listened, his boots echoing softly against the metallic floor. The images of the ship's systems unfolded before them, projected in shimmering holograms that filled the air. Vast engines capable of bending space, weapons that could shatter entire fleets, and intricate tools designed for terraforming hostile worlds, all of it lay dormant, waiting for a hand to command it. It was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Myra, walking beside him, reached out to touch one of the holograms. Her fingers passed through the light, but the sensation left her shivering. "It's incredible," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They built all of this, and then they gave it up. Why would they abandon something so powerful?" Orasis paused, as if considering her question carefully. "Because they understood that power without wisdom leads to ruin," it said, its voice softer now. "Your ancestors saw the cracks forming in their empire: arrogance, complacency, and greed. They chose to start over, to give their descendants the chance to grow without the burden of their mistakes. But now, the galaxy has changed. The time has come for you to decide what kind of legacy you will leave behind." Drake stopped, turning to face the glowing form of Orasis. His eyes were hard, his expression unreadable. "And what if we're not ready?" he asked, his voice low. "What if we make the same mistakes they did?" Orasis's light pulsed faintly, as though it were breathing. "Then the cycle will repeat," it said simply. "But you are not bound by the past, Captain. You have the power to choose a different path." Far away on Terra, the atmosphere in the presidential chamber was tense, the air thick with urgency. President Alina Sarl stood at the head of the long table, her sharp features illuminated by the soft glow of the holographic display before her. Around her, advisors and military leaders argued in hushed but heated tones, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of fear and uncertainty. The hologram displayed the galaxy in stunning detail, with clusters of alien fleets marked in red, their movements like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Reports from intelligence networks confirmed what they already feared: the galaxy's powers were mobilizing. Some were preparing for war, others merely watching, waiting to see what the Terrans would do next. President Sarl raised her hand, and the room fell silent. Her voice, though calm, carried the weight of authority. "We have the tools to defend ourselves," she began, her gaze sweeping across the room. "Our ancestors left us technology that could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. But the question is not whether we can use it. The question is whether we should." General Kessin, a grizzled veteran with a scar running down his cheek, leaned forward, his voice gruff but steady. "Madam President, The alien fleets aren't mobilizing out of curiosity. They're afraid. If we don't show them our strength, they'll see it as weakness. And weakness invites attack. Across the table, Secretary Doran, the head of diplomacy, shook his head. Strength doesn't have to mean aggression, he countered. If we use this technology to strike first, we'll confirm their worst fears. We'll become the conquerors they already suspect us to be. But if we show restraint, if we reach out instead of lashing out, we might be able to turn this fear into cooperation. Sorrel listened, her expression unreadable, as the arguments continued. Some advisors urged caution, others pressed for decisive action. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on her shoulders, and she felt the eyes of history watching her. This was more than a political choice, it was a moral one, a choice that would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. She turned to the hologram, her gaze fixed on the glowing symbols that represented the ancient Terran ships. They were scattered across the galaxy, silent but powerful, like sleeping giants waiting to be awakened. Her thoughts turned to the stories she had read as a child, tales of humanity's resilience, its capacity for both great destruction and great compassion. What kind of story would they write now? Perhaps, she said softly, more to herself than to the room, we were never meant to be conquerors. Perhaps our strength lies in something greater. The room fell silent again, her words hanging in the air like a fragile thread of hope. She turned back to her advisors, her voice firm now. We will defend ourselves if we must. But we will not strike first. Let the galaxy see that we are not the rulers of the past, but the guardians of the future. Meanwhile, across the stars, alien fleets moved like shadows, their leaders torn between fear and curiosity. On the bridge of a Hegari warship, High Chancellor Vorthes stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his yellow eyes fixed on the swirling void of hyperspace. The Terrans are awakening, he murmured, his voice barely audible. And with them, the ghosts of their empire. On a Piran battleship, General Korod paced like a caged animal, his claws clicking against the metal floor. They will not fool us with words of peace, he growled. We must strike before they rise. And in the quiet halls of the Varnoke Dominion, Counselor Lyra gazed at the stars through a crystalline viewport, her heart heavy with the weight of possibility. Perhaps, she whispered, this is not the end, but the beginning. Across the galaxy, the pieces were moving, the players stepping into position. And at the center of it all stood humanity, poised on the edge of a choice that would shape the fate of the stars. Would they lead with wisdom, or fall to the temptations of power? The answer lay not in their past, but in the choices they would make now. The void of space surrounding Terra was no longer silent. The largest alien fleet ever assembled loomed at the edges of its orbit, a wall of ships that shimmered like a sea of steel and fire. Massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons, sleek cruisers with glowing energy cores, and swarms of smaller, agile fighters formed a blockade that stretched as far as the eye could see. Each vessel bore the distinct markings of its home world, a kaleidoscope of alien designs and colors that reflected the diversity of the galaxy's civilizations. Yet, despite their differences, they were united by one purpose, the containment of Terra. On board the TSS Concord, a diplomatic ship dwarfed by the alien armada, Captain Darius Holt stood silently on the bridge. His face was calm, but his hands, clasped tightly behind his back, betrayed his tension. Around him, his crew worked in hushed tones, their movements precise but heavy with the weight of the moment. Beyond the viewport, the shadow of the alien fleet seemed to press down on them, a reminder of the fragile line they walked. Beside him stood Orasis, now in a humanoid holographic form. The AI's presence was both unsettling and awe-inspiring. Its translucent figure glowed faintly, its features sharp yet fluid, shifting subtly as though it were still deciding how best to appear. Its eyes, deep pools of light that seemed to hold the weight of millennia, turned to hold. "They are afraid," Orasis said, its voice calm but resonant, as though it spoke not just to hold, but to the very air around them. "Fear is a powerful force. It blinds reason and feeds chaos. But it can also be transformed if we speak to the truth buried beneath it." Hold nodded, his jaw tightening. "Let's hope they're willing to listen." The alien fleet's demand came like the crack of thunder, transmitted across all channels in a dozen different languages, each one layered with urgency and threat. "People of Terra," the message began, "your ancient weapons and technology pose a threat to the peace and balance of the galaxy. Surrender now, or face annihilation." The words hung in the air like a sword poised to fall. The crew of the Concorde exchanged uneasy glances, their breaths shallow, their gazes flickering to hold. But before the captain could respond, Orasis stepped forward, its form shimmering as it accessed the ship's communication systems. The lights dimmed slightly as its presence expanded, and when it spoke, its voice echoed not just in the Concorde, but across the vastness of the alien fleet. "Children of the stars," Orasis began, its tone neither confrontational nor pleading, but steady and filled with a quiet power. "Why do you fear us?" The words rippled through the fleet, transmitted to every ship, every commander. On the bridges of the alien vessels, officers froze, their eyes widening as the voice reached them. It was not the voice of a conqueror, nor the cold precision of a machine. It was something ancient, something alive, and it carried with it the weight of a truth long forgotten. "We are not your enemies," Orasis continued, its glowing form standing tall on the Concorde. "We are your ancestors." The silence that followed was deafening. Across thousands of ships, alien commanders turned to one another in confusion, disbelief flickering in their expressions. On a Hegari battleship, High Chancellor Vorthes leaned forward in his command chair, his yellow eyes narrowing. On a Piran dreadnought, General Corridus' claws dug into the armrests, his lips curling into a snarl of suspicion. And in the quiet halls of the Varnoke Dominion, Councillor Lyra watched the transmission with wide, unblinking eyes, her breath caught in her throat. Orasis continued, its voice steady and unwavering. "Long ago, when your worlds were young, it was the Terrans who reached out to you. We saw the potential in your peoples, the spark of life and intelligence that could one day light the galaxy. We guided you, nurtured your civilizations, and when the time came, we stepped aside, so that you might grow free of our shadow." Holograms began to appear alongside Orasis, projections of ancient Terran ships descending to alien worlds, their crews working alongside the ancestors of the very species now gathered in the fleet. Images of Terran hands building cities, sharing knowledge, and walking beside beings who looked up to them with trust and hope. The scenes were vivid, almost tangible, and they stirred something deep within the hearts of those who watched. "You are not our subjects," Orasis said, its voice softening, almost mournful. "You are our legacy. The galaxy you know today exists because of the choices we made to protect, to guide, and ultimately, to let go. We did not seek to rule then, and we do not seek to rule now." On board the alien ships, the commanders sat in stunned silence. The images and words struck at the core of their beliefs, challenging the narratives they had been taught for generations. To many, the Terrans were myths, ancient conquerors who had vanished into the void. To hear that they had been something more, something benevolent, was almost too much to comprehend. But not all were swayed. On his dreadnought, General Korat slammed his fist onto the console, his voice a growl of defiance. Lies, he spat. They speak of guidance, but what they mean is control. They abandoned the galaxy once before. Why should we trust them now? Yet even as his words echoed through his bridge, doubt lingered in the eyes of his officers. The images of Terrans walking among their ancestors, of shared laughter and cooperation, were hard to dismiss. And in the quiet moments that followed, others began to question the fear that had driven them here. Back on the Concorde, Orasis's form shimmered faintly, as though the weight of its own words was pressing down on it. It turned to Holt, its glowing eyes meeting his. "The truth has been spoken," it said softly. "But truth alone is not enough. They must decide for themselves what to believe." Holt nodded, his expression grim but resolute. "And if they choose war?" Orasis's light dimmed for a moment, a flicker of something almost like sorrow passing through its form. "Then we will defend ourselves," it said. "But we will do so not as conquerors, but as guardians. And we will remind them, even in conflict, that we are not here to destroy but to protect what we all share." As the alien fleet deliberated, the tension in the galaxy grew like a storm on the horizon. The meeting of Titans, humanity and the united powers of the stars had begun. And in the silence that followed Orasis's words, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, poised between fear and hope, between war and peace. Across the galaxy, the stars themselves seemed to stir, as if whispering secrets long buried. On distant worlds, where ancient Terran ruins had lain silent for centuries, the stillness was broken. Structures of impossible design, towers that spiraled into the heavens, temples carved into mountainsides, and vast subterranean complexes began to hum with life. Soft, golden lights flickered to life, illuminating forgotten halls and chambers. Walls etched with symbols and intricate carvings shimmered as holographic projections emerged, depicting scenes from humanity's ancient past. On a desert world with blood-red skies, a group of alien archaeologists stumbled upon a towering obelisk that had stood dormant for generations. As their hands brushed against its surface, the stone began to glow. A voice, deep and melodic, filled the air, speaking in a language long forgotten but somehow understood by all who heard it. The holographic figure of a Terran appeared, its form radiant and commanding, yet serene. It spoke of an age when humanity had walked among the stars, not as conquerors, but as guides and protectors. The aliens, wide-eyed and trembling, fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the realization that their myths of golden gods were not myths at all. On another world, buried beneath a frozen tundra, a massive Terran archive awakened. Its crystalline walls refracted light into 1,000 colors as holograms danced across the air. Entire cities of alien inhabitants gathered to watch as the records revealed the story of their own creation, their first steps as a species, guided by Terran hands. Some wept openly, their faith validated, others stood in stunned silence, their understanding of the universe shattered and rebuilt in an instant. Meanwhile, on Terra, Dr. Evelyn Merrick worked tirelessly in a sprawling research facility. The room was filled with glowing screens and ancient artifacts, each piece a fragment of the puzzle humanity was trying to reconstruct. Evelyn, her hair tied back and her eyes alight with determination, pored over the new records being transmitted from across the galaxy. Every discovery brought more clarity and more questions. The galaxy is not just a collection of random civilizations, she told her team one evening, her voice firm yet tinged with awe. It is a tapestry, woven by our ancestors. Every thread, every world, every species is connected. And now, it falls to us to preserve this tapestry, to ensure it thrives. Her words carried a weight that silenced the room. They all understood the magnitude of their task. This was not just about uncovering history, it was about shaping the future. And as the ruins continued to awaken, revealing truths that had been lost to time, the galaxy itself began to change. What had once been a fractured collection of distrustful civilizations now found itself bound by a shared heritage, a common origin that could no longer be denied. 5 years had passed, and the galaxy was unrecognizable. The fractured Galactic Council, once riddled with corruption and mistrust, had been replaced by the Terran Commonwealth, a coalition of humans and aliens united by the rediscovered legacy of the ancients. What had once been a galaxy teetering on the edge of chaos was now a place of cautious hope and renewal. The ancient Terran technology, once feared as a weapon of destruction, had become the foundation for a new era. Massive starships, powered by engines capable of folding space itself, turned journeys that had taken weeks or months into mere hours. Trade flourished, cultures exchanged ideas, and distant worlds once isolated by the vastness of space were now within reach. Captain Elias Drake stood on the bridge of the TSS Horizon, a sleek exploration vessel designed to uncover the remaining secrets of humanity's past. The ship was a marvel of Terran and alien engineering, its halls filled with a crew of diverse backgrounds: humans, Hegari, Pirans, and others working side by side. Drake, older now but no less resolute, surveyed his crew with pride. "We are not here to rule," he reminded them during their first mission briefing, his voice steady but warm. "We are here to learn, to grow, and to help others do the same. Our ancestors left us a legacy, but it is not one of power, it is one of responsibility. Let that guide us as we chart the unknown." The horizon descended onto a newly discovered world, its surface lush with vibrant forests and shimmering rivers. The air was thick with the hum of life, and the ground beneath them felt untouched, sacred. As the crew stepped onto the soil, a sense of reverence filled the air. They were not just explorers, they were caretakers, entrusted with the task of preserving the wonders they found. Back on Terra, President Alina Sarl stood on a vast platform overlooking a newly terraformed world. The sky above was a deep azure, the sun casting golden light over a gathering of thousands, Terrans and aliens alike, united in purpose. The air buzzed with anticipation as she stepped forward, her voice amplified but clear, carrying the weight of her words to every corner of the galaxy. "Our ancestors chose to sleep," she began, her voice steady and filled with conviction, "so that the galaxy could grow without them. They believed in the strength of the civilizations they nurtured, in the potential of those who came after them. Now, we awaken not to reclaim what was lost, but to build something greater together." The crowd erupted into applause, but Sarl's gaze remained steady, her expression one of quiet determination. She looked out over the sea of faces, some familiar, others alien, but all filled with the same hope. This was not just about humanity's return, it was about forging a new path, one where the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. As the ceremony ended and the crowd began to disperse, the sky above lit up with the streaks of starships departing for the unknown. Among them was the horizon, its engines blazing as it carried its crew toward the next chapter of the galaxy's story. And as it disappeared into the stars, the message of unity and renewal echoed across the cosmos, a beacon of hope for all who heard it. The galaxy was no longer divided by fear or mistrust. It was a tapestry, woven together by the hands of many, and its threads shone brighter than ever before.